Hey everybody, grab a Bible. Let's look at Matthew 18 again. And you might be wondering, hey, why is he spending so much time in Matthew 18 talking about forgiveness? Well, it's because it's such an important subject in our world today, and it's such an important thing that a lot of people wrestle with. You might say, well, yeah, I know I'm supposed to forgive people, and I forgive you today, but 2 or 3 days from now, well, I'm not so sure. I kind of changed my mind. And so we started looking last week at some ways to give or experience lasting forgiveness, something that goes the distance. It's not just a temporary thing that you give up on. Last week, if you were watching, it was about opening your heart to prepare to forgive. But today we're going to look at the second requirement for lasting forgiveness is extending compassion to the person who hurts you. And you hear that and you say, don't want to do that. Okay, well, just listen a minute, okay? Matthew 18, if you've been listening, you know the parable about the guy, the king forgave him a whole bunch of money. And then he turned around and found a guy who, owed him a few bucks, and he would not forgive him. He did not pass on the forgiveness he had received. But let's look on down at verse 27, Matthew 18 and 27. It says, then the master of that servant, this was the king, the master of that servant was moved with compassion. He released him and forgave him the debt. When the king forgave the servant, it says he was moved with compassion to the servant. And then down in verse 33, he said, should you not also have had compassion on your fellow servant, just as I had pity on you? So we see in both of those verses that we need to extend compassion to the person. Think about that person right now who hurt you, who did you wrong, who said something, who hurt your feelings, that person that you're struggling to forgive. Can you extend compassion to them? And your first thought is, well, no, I get it, but I think sometimes we have to step back and realize, hey, I'm a human being, I'm an imperfect human being, and that person also, they are also an imperfect human being. They got problems, they got heart wounds, they may be hurting. It may be the reason that they hurt you is because they're hurting themselves inside. There's the old saying that hurting people hurt people. And probably one of the reasons they hurt you is because they're hurting inside. And if we can just kind of step back and realize that, it will help us to be able to extend compassion to that person. And that'll help us to be able to experience some lasting forgiveness. If you ever patted somebody on the back, just a little old light pat on the back, and they just kind of freak out, and you're surprised by the overreaction. You're thinking, hey, I just a little simple pat on the back, and then they tell you they've got severe sunburn on their back. So you didn't know it. You were just doing a simple gesture, patting them on the back, but because of the pain they were experiencing, they had just a big overreaction to it. We have to realize sometimes people are hurting and we don't even know it. People are good at hiding their hurt. And there's a song I've heard on the radio here a lot recently on the Southern Gospel station that says, you never know what somebody else is going through. And that's why we can extend grace and be merciful, because you just never know what somebody else is going through. Bobby Marsh, who lives here locally, he comes here and sings sometimes. He sings a song that says, everybody's going through something. Everybody's going through something. Some people hide it better than others. Some people try to hide it better than others. Some don't try to hide it at all. But everybody's going through something. And that's why we need to be merciful and extend forgiveness. I want to close with a little story here I heard. I read about a man and his wife. They came into a movie theater. They bought their tickets, and this was the kind of theater that you bought certain seats, row 5A and B. And they came in to sit in the seats that they had paid for, and there was some guy just laid out, stretched out across their theater seats. And they, began to tell him, hey, guy, we paid for those seats you need to move. Well, he didn't say nothing. He didn't move. He just laid there. So they went and got the manager of the theater. The manager of the theater came out and began to talk to this guy and said, "Hey, buddy, these people paid for these seats. You can't just be laying there." And tried to get him to get up. The man wouldn't say nothing, wouldn't do nothing, just kept laying there. Well, the manager finally went and got the police. And the police came in and a little more authority, and said, "Hey, buddy, you've got to move. These people paid for these tickets. You can't be just laying across them here in the theater." And the guy didn't say anything. And finally, the police kind of shook him a little bit and said, "Hey, buddy, where did you come from? Where are you from?" Finally, the guy looked up weakly and he said, "From the balcony." See, he had fallen from the balcony. They didn't realize it. They didn't take the time to assess what had really happened. And I thought that's a good illustration of our world. A lot of times people are doing things they're not supposed to be doing, and they're in places that they really shouldn't be, but it's all because they've fallen and they're hurting, and they've got some real hurts going on inside. So I just want to challenge you, whatever that person did to you, realize they're an imperfect human being, just like you're an imperfect human being. I challenge you, extend some compassion. Just like God has extended compassion to you, we're called to extend that compassion to other people. So thanks for watching. Hope you have a great evening.